In the summer of 1937, on the outskirts of Beijing, a single gunshot echoed across the Marco Polo Bridge. No one knew who fired it. No one knew if anyone had even been hit. But within hours, this tiny incident would explode into a full-scale war. A war that would burn across Asia for 8 long years. A war so brutal that historians call it the Asian Holocaust. A war that killed more than 20 million people, reshaped global geopolitics, and directly triggered the Pacific War against the United States. This is the story of the Second Sino-Japanese War, how it began, why it happened, and how it changed Asia forever. To understand why Japan invaded China, we must go back decades. In the late 1800s, Japan transformed from a feudal nation into a modern industrial power. Railways, steel factories, a modern navy. Japan was hungry for natural resources and political influence. Meanwhile, China under the Qing dynasty was collapsing. Civil wars, corruption, foreign invasions, the empire was in chaos. Japan saw opportunity. They fought China in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1894 and shocked the world by winning. Japan took Taiwan, gained influence over Korea, and proved themselves as a rising power. But for Japan's military leaders, this victory wasn't enough. Japan believed it was their destiny, their right, to dominate East Asia. They looked at China, rich in resources but politically weak, and saw a nation ripe for exploitation. By the 1930s, China had finally reunited under Chiang Kai-shek, but Japan had already made its move. In 1931, the Japanese Kwantung Army staged the Mukden Incident, blew up their own railway, and blamed China. Within months, they seized Manchuria and created the puppet state of Manchukuo. Japan's expansion had begun. The League of Nations condemned the invasion. Japan simply walked out. Isolation pushed Japan deeper into nationalism. Military officers gained power, assassinating politicians who opposed expansion. Propaganda preached that Japan must conquer Asia to survive. By 1937, the stage was set. On the night of July 7, 1937, Japanese soldiers were conducting night exercises near the Marco Polo Bridge outside Beijing. A Japanese soldier was reported missing during the drill. The Japanese commander demanded access to the nearby Chinese town to search for him. The Chinese refused. Tensions rose. Shots were exchanged. And the missing soldier later returned unharmed. But by then, it was too late. The Japanese army used the incident as an excuse to launch a full assault. Within days, war erupted across North China. Neither Japan nor China planned for a long war. But once fighting began, neither side backed down. Chiang Kai-shek made a bold decision. Rather than surrender northern cities, he aimed to strike a symbolic blow by defending Shanghai, China's most modern and international city. Shanghai became the first major battle of the war. On August 13, 1937, Chinese forces launched a sudden attack on Japanese positions. Japan responded by sending tens of thousands of reinforcements. For 3 months, the fighting turned the city into a nightmare. Street by street, building by building, sniper against sniper. The Chinese fought with extraordinary courage, but Japan's army was better equipped, better trained, and supported by naval artillery and air power. By November, Shanghai fell. Chiang Kai-shek ordered a full retreat, but the Japanese army did not stop. They advanced toward the capital city, Nanjing. What followed would become one of the darkest chapters in modern history. By December 1937, Nanjing was surrounded. Chiang Kai-shek had already withdrawn to central China to continue directing the war effort, leaving General Tang Shengji to defend the capital with exhausted, under-equipped troops. Morale was low, ammunition was running out, and no reinforcements were coming. On December 13th, Japanese forces broke through the final defensive lines and entered Nanjing. What followed became one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. For the next 6 weeks, Japanese soldiers carried out mass killings, executions, torture, arson, and widespread sexual violence. Historians estimate that between 200,000 and 300,000 civilians were killed. Entire neighborhoods were emptied. Bodies filled the streets and the Yangtze River. The international community was stunned. Yet amid the horror, a small group of foreigners stayed behind, risking their lives to save as many civilians as possible. The most famous of them was John Rabe, a German businessman and member of the Nazi Party. Ironically, it was his Nazi affiliation that provided him protection. Japan respected Germany as an ally. Using that political shield, Rabe helped establish the Nanjing Safety Zone, an area intended to shelter unarmed civilians. With nothing but his armband and the Nazi flag above the compound, Rabe confronted Japanese soldiers directly, ordering them away from refugees. He documented atrocities in his diary, sheltered thousands in the Siemens compound, and helped hide women and children from military patrols. His actions, along with those of other foreigners, saved an estimated 200,000 civilians from likely death. But even though Japan had captured the capital and other major cities, its leaders soon realized they had miscalculated. The fall of Nanjing did not break China's spirit. Chiang Kai-shek refused to surrender. His government, military, and population retreated inland, determined to continue the fight. What Japan hoped would be a swift victory became a grinding, years-long war that drained resources and pushed the empire deeper into conflict, one it could not easily escape. After Nanjing, Japan believed China would collapse quickly. They were wrong. China had several advantages. 1. A vast territory. Even if Japan captured major cities, China's interior remained under Chinese control. 2. A huge population. China could replace lost soldiers far more easily. 3. Foreign support. The United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union all provided weapons, money, and military advisors. 4. Two major armies, Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists and Mao Zedong's communists, both fought the Japanese, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing. Japan found itself trapped in a massive land war without end. Their army captured Beijing, Shanghai, Nanjing, Wuhan, Canton. But every city taken stretched Japan's supply lines thinner. Guerrilla warfare spread behind Japanese lines. Sabotage, ambushes, assassinations. The Japanese never had full control. For the first time, Japan realized they were stuck in a war they could not win quickly. In 1938, Japan aimed to deliver a decisive blow by capturing Wuhan, China's temporary capital and industrial center. The Chinese deployed nearly 1 million soldiers to defend it, the largest single battle in Asian history at the time. The fighting lasted 4 months. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Thousands died from heat, disease, and exhaustion. Japan eventually captured Wuhan, but the Chinese government simply moved inland again. China refused to die. Japan was now fully committed, but victory seemed farther away than ever. By 1939, Japan faced serious problems: running out of oil, running out of steel, running out of money, running out of soldiers. The Japanese military escalated their strategy, launching attacks deeper into Chinese territory. But the more they expanded, the more resistance they faced. Japan hoped to cut China off by occupying French Indochina in 1940. This, however, triggered a powerful enemy: the United States. President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with an oil embargo. This was devastating. Japan imported 80% of its oil from America. Without oil, Japan's military and its war in China would collapse. Japan now faced a terrible choice: withdraw from China or go to war with the United States. Their decision would change the world. Meanwhile, China continued fighting with crucial help from abroad. The Burma Road, built through the mountains between Burma and China, became a lifeline for supplies and weapons. American pilots known as the Flying Tigers helped defend Chinese skies. Soviet tanks supported ground forces. Although corrupt and divided, China's armies still resisted. Millions of civilians moved factories, schools, and government offices deep into the interior. Entire cities were rebuilt from scratch. China turned into a war machine powered by sheer determination. This resistance played a major role in exhausting Japan before the Pacific War even began. The war against Japan overlapped with another conflict: the growing rivalry between Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists and Mao's communist forces. Technically, they were allies against Japan. In reality, both sides saved their strength for the civil war they knew would come afterward. Nationalists fought most major battles. Communists focused on guerrilla warfare and expanding influence in rural areas. By 1945, China was preparing for two wars, one against Japan and one against each other. Japan's decision to attack the United States on December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor transformed the Sino-Japanese War into a global conflict. The U.S. entered the war against Japan and became China's strongest ally. Now Japan fought the United States, Britain, Australia, the Soviet Union, China. The empire was overstretched. American submarines cut off Japanese supply lines. Bombers destroyed factories at home. Island by island, Japan lost territory. By 1944, Japan's defeat became inevitable. In 1945, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and launched a massive invasion of Manchuria. Soviet tanks crushed the Japanese Kwantung Army in just 2 weeks. Then came the final blow. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to surrender. On September 2, 1945, Japan officially ended the war. After 8 years of fighting, the Second Sino-Japanese War was finally over. The war left deep scars. China lost more than 20 million people. Cities were destroyed. The economy collapsed. Millions were homeless. Japan faced its own devastation: bombed cities, famine, and foreign occupation. But the end of the war also reshaped Asia. 1. China erupted into civil war, communists versus nationalists. In 1949, Mao Zedong won and founded the People's Republic of China. 2. Japan rebuilt under U.S. occupation, transforming into a peaceful, democratic nation. 3. Asia's balance of power was permanently changed. Even today, the memory of the war still influences China-Japan relations. The Second Sino-Japanese War is often overshadowed by World War II in Europe, but it remains one of the most important and tragic conflicts of the 20th century. It was a war sparked by ambition, fueled by nationalism, sustained by resistance, and ended only by global catastrophe. From the Marco Polo Bridge to the ruins of Nanjing to the battlefields of Shanghai and Wuhan, the war reshaped the destiny of two great nations. Understanding this war is essential to understanding modern Asia, because the echoes of 1937 are still heard today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and keep exploring the world's history with us.